In the summer of 1953, private investigator Will Lucky Marks was working as the in-house private eye for Arcane Pacific Pictures. Trapped inside the studio with the killer, Lucky must find the killer before time runs out. Lot 28. Own it today. Available iTunes and Amazon.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Willow's Pillow Talk. I am Willow I am Willow Schuyler. With me today is my boss from Hanging with Webb, GW. How's it going?
It is going well. It is going. We just got back from vacation, so it is awesome to be back in the studio. It is awesome to be back online with all of our shows and to catch up with everybody. I mean, it's awesome just to be back. So. It is.
I'm glad that you guys are back. I know you guys had some car trouble out there.
Well, yeah. For those of you watching, if you guys have ever seen, well, I did this with a movie. So I said, if you guys have ever seen the movie Doc Hollywood, where Michael J. Fox gets broke down and ends up in a very small town, or if you're younger and you saw the movie Cars. Yes. It really is the same. It really is the same story. Instead of Radiator Springs, we ended up in Glade Springs, Virginia, with some of the nicest people you ever met. With
super small
with the essentially the back wheels of my car falling off.
Oh no!
So, long story short. We met some really amazing people, and we're fortunate enough to get back on the road by the end of the weekend and get home. And
it was an adventure.
Yes, it was.
If you ever want to check it out, go to Exit 29.
Exit 29, that's right, in Virginia, guys, on
75.
On Route 75. So.
And Marcus, you are one of two hosts of Words Have Power Murder Hour on YouTube. Tell me how you guys got started with that.
Well, my wife is a victim of abuse in multiple facets from prior relationships, and a little bit of having to help her come to terms with it, and her having to address herself, overcoming all of that. And we decided to start a podcast and YouTube channel where we would address all of these abusive behaviors that she and many women across the country and across the world go through on a daily basis, to try and bring awareness to it and help people, I would say mostly women, but it's also men, escape and get out of these really dangerous situations. Most of the stories that we cover end in murder.
Oh, wow. And you both were in the American military. Tell me about your service, Marcus. How did you get into it?
I was 20 years old whenever I enlisted in the U.S. Army. I was just kind of wandering through life, didn't really have a solid idea, set purpose of what I wanted to do. And then I was at a rock concert and there was a recruiter there, and I was like, hey, let's go over there to my friend. Let's go talk to them real quick. And it just seemed like something that I should probably do. So took the recruitment test, went to the MEPS facility, took the ASVAB, wound up getting in 84, which is remarkably high. I didn't think I would get that. Pretty much got the pick of any job that I wanted in the military. Got sent out to, a little bit of backstory. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I've seen snow twice in my lifetime.
You don't want to be here.
Well, here's the thing. They sent me up to Fort Sill, Oklahoma in the beginning of February. Ooh. I walked off the plane,
poor guy.
Walked out of the airport, saw all the snow on the ground. Nerves are running. I'm nervous. So is everybody else that's with me. I just turned around. I was like, what is with all this white stuff on the ground? People just leave crack laying out here like this?
we just like to tear apart the styrofoam when we get packages.
Right. But no, I really enjoyed my time in basic training. I actually got injured when I was in basics, so I didn't really see that much service. But better than some of the other guys that just quit because they didn't want it.
Yeah. So, well, Garrett, what made you decide to join the military?
To be honest, since I was about in my mid-teens, I had wanted to. I went to a military boarding school as a teenager from grades 9 through 12. Florida Air Academy, now Florida Preparatory Academy, right here in Melbourne, Florida. So service was sort of always the direction I was going in. A lot of my friends, when we graduated, went on to college and then into the service. It was sort of the planned route. It was a college prep school. So when I got out of school, though, I was done with school for a while. I didn't want to go to school, so I went into the recruiter's office and wanted to find out how fast could I leave. And I too, it's a part of our school package. We do the ASVAB test at school. And I had done very well. I had the GT score, which is that overall score that Marcus was talking about, is a wide range. It goes up to about 180 or whatever. That being like nuclear submarine operator or some crap like that. I scored about a 110, and I could have done just about any job that wasn't science or that didn't require a degree, because a lot of jobs in the service do require a degree in a field. But I was like tired of school, and I was tired of books and papers, and I was like, no, I want to be a guy's guy. I want to do guy stuff. And so I had a wonderful recruiter that actually what I really wanted to do was I had been on the drill team and color guard in high school, and I really wanted to do the honor guard. And in the Army, our honor guard is called the Old Guard. It is the oldest ceremonial unit in the U.S. military. It's called the Old Guard. They're the guys that guard the tomb of the unknown soldier, etc. But the only way to be in the Old Guard is to be an infantryman, because the Old Guard is an infantry unit. So I was like, you know what? That sounds cool. The training sounds amazing. I'm going to get all this, testosterone out, and then I'm going to get to polish up my boots and go out and be a ceremonial, guy. And so I joined the infantry, and I went to basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, in January. I am originally from upstate New York, but I had been here since I was 14 years old. I had lived in Central Florida, which is the tropics, for those of you that don't know. So January 3rd, when the cattle car doors opened in Fort Benning, Georgia, and the ground was frozen solid, I was reacquainted with wintertime in a way that was not the most comfortable. But yeah,
I do agree with Josh, though. Snow is overrated.
Snow is very overrated. And if you are now, and Marcus, you and I can both testify. If you're in uniform, which by the way, those uniforms, we have a winter and summer. There is very little difference between the two. The only difference is how fast you're shivering inside of it, because this is not a uniform made. This is made for movement and action. So, it's not made for like warmth.
There's no long johns that are or like long underwear that's worn in the military for this stuff.
They have a lot of different things, not with your initial issue. So when you're going to basic training, if you until about your third or fourth week, when you get to go down and actually shop, the stuff they give you is the basics, and the stuff you shop for is the stuff you shop for. You can get long underwear, and they have under all of that stuff you buy. The stuff they give you is like 6 t-shirts, 6 pair of underwear, 4 pair of pants, and so you get the very basics. And so you're out there, and it's January or February, and it's cold, and all you could think, and then they do give you like a winter jacket and a pair of gloves, which, by the way, when you're laying in the snow, it doesn't really matter.
No.
Because you're soaked and you're in the snow and it's cold. So, but yeah, I went in the infantry, and then I found out about midway through basic training, the unit that I was with was what's called the cohort unit in the late 90s, late 90s, early 90s. They were experimenting with a process that they had done during World War II, which is guys that went to basic together would get to serve together, and it was sort of a camaraderie builder. And that unit that I was with, I was the only one scheduled to go to another unit. I was going to go to the Old Guard. They were going to go to the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. they were getting a better deal than me. But it turns out about halfway through basic training, my drill instructor was very honest and very straight and looked at me and said, dude, there's no way you're going to the old guard. And I was like, why? I have the skills. He's like, no, it's not about that. All old guard members are 6 feet tall, and they can get a waiver down to 5'10" because they put a lift in their boot that makes them the same height as everybody else. They don't do this stuff that we do. When you're lined up in your regular unit, it's at first it's by height. It's the tall guy up here, and then it works all the way down to the shortest guy in the back. I was always that guy. So he was like, there's just no way. There's no lift that they can make you. You're 5'8", 5'7.5" on a really cold day, and you're not going to the old guard. And I was like, okay. And he goes, I can put you in this unit. You can go with them, or we can just put you into what I'm sure Marcus is familiar with, general rotation, which is you get your assignment at the end of basic. And I didn't want to wait around for that. So I said, yeah, no, put me in with these guys. They're going to Hawaii. That sounds cool. And by the way, guys, Hawaii sounds really cool unless you're going to spend like 3 years sleeping in the Hawaiian mud, in which case, not as cool. Watch like Platoon. That was filmed in Hawaii, okay? It's not a good day. So
my cousin can vouch for that. He was stationed in Hawaii as his first duty station.
Yeah, it's just not, it sounds great. All you can think of in your mind are like coconut trees and Waikiki. And then you get there, and you know how hard it is to dig a hole in an island that's made out of volcanic rock? It doesn't want to have you digging it. It doesn't. So, but yeah, I joined in 1989 in January, and I served until May 22nd, 1992. And I was fortunate enough to be deployed to Egypt during the Gulf War. I didn't have to go over to Iraq and Kuwait and those places. I was in the rear. I was in Egypt, making sure that the Egyptians and the Israelis were going to play nice during the war, because they don't like each other very much, it turns out. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah, so somebody had to keep an eye on those guys, and that was what me and my guys did, and so it was a wonderful experience. I tell people all the time, the breadth of life that you have in the service is amazing. In that, you get to see things you would never see other. I've literally fallen asleep in the shadow of the Sphinx, and there is just, come on. I would have dreamed of that had it not happened.
So now, because of your guys' service, are you guys able to just sleep anywhere?
Yes.
I was for a long time. I'm 50 now, so pillow top is nice. But for about 25 years, yeah, I could pretty much sleep under a tree in the rain and not care.
Same. My hip just hurts in the morning.
Yeah, see, so there comes a moment when no matter how all go no quit you are, you do get old. And I know guys who serve in the Army in particular, but every service has its own unique quirks. In the Army, our quirk is we walk everywhere, not because we don't have trucks, because we walk by motorboats filled with trucks. We just don't get to ride in them, so we get to walk everywhere with stuff on our back. So your back and your knees are the first things that, it's like, all my friends were like hitting their mid 40s, and they were like, "Oh, my back's starting to hurt." I'm like, "My back is hurting since I was like 25."
Josh wants to know how many shovels you broke.
Oh my! Well, first of all, Josh, a shovel in the Army is called an E-tool, and they're made of metal. It's hard to break them. They break you. Yeah. Because they're only this long.
I was just gonna say,
you're gonna dig a hole the depth of a man with a shovel the depth of your foot. It's gonna take a lot of heave-hoeing to get a hole dug with that little E-tool. However, and this is, I hope this is an adult-rated show, because
go right ahead and swear, be yourself.
The edge of an E-tool, the folding over of the E-tool does make an excellent potty.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. There's no men's room in the middle of the woods. Never break your E-tool. That's good advice. That's good advice, no matter even if you don't know what that word means and you're just making it up in some kind of a way, that's still good advice. Don't break your
So what positive experience did you guys take away from being a part of the military?
I'll let the
If
older
there
vet
was
go
any.
first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Or
You know what? I don't think there's a negative. I don't think there's a negative experience that I took away. I mean, we make a lot of jokes, and service life is hardship, and I think the bonds that are created between service members are because of shared hardship. Marcus and I, have only met I think one time on the internet once before, but we could have a conversation. We ran into each other in the street. We could have a conversation. We speak the same language, and it's based on a shared hardship. There were different times and in different places, but those experiences are the same. And so, and they become funny over time. They become a nice anecdote that you have. But the entire experience for me was a character builder. I was fortunate enough to go in after 4 years of ROTC, so I had a little bit of extra money and a little tiny bit of rank on my collar. I was able to become a team leader very early and learn some leadership skills and go to PLDC, which was, I think they call it Basic Warrior Leadership School now. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, my son, before he got out, had just graduated his Basic Warrior Leadership course. So, but we had, I learned a little bit about leadership and about how to not take, position for granted. The position of a leader is not a position of authority; it's a position of responsibility, and those are things that I learned in the Army. Things that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. I know a lot of people who've taken, courses and classes and management styles and things, but getting into the core of who a person is and how you can motivate them and how you can think about what the job of an Army NCO or an Army officer is. I have to convince you that you want to do something that could kill you. There's a certain, there's a psychology that plays into that, and learning about those things made me hungry to learn more. How does that work? I mean, I know that it does because they've taught me how to do it and it worked, but how does that work? What's the mental capacity? Why do people follow a person like me into a very uncomfortable place? And so it made me hungry to learn more. I hope it made me a decent manager and a decent leader in my life. And I know it's the only way that I learned how to be a dad. I didn't go to like dad school. I went to NCO school. And so my kids grew up with, drill daddy.
Okay.
I hope it made them, pretty outstanding young men. So.
Well, so far, yeah, I think your kids turned out really well.
Yeah, there's that one that lives here, but we don't talk about him.
The one that you keep in the basement?
He's out there. He picks up heavy things. He lifts them down. I don't know what that's about.
Marcus, how about you? Any positive experiences from your days in the military?
Getting to jump the line at the chow because you were in the Tink Tink crew. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
Look, there are a few things that a grunt never misses, and a meal is one of them. So yeah.
Yeah. So the Tink Tink bit is basically anybody who has to fall out of formation because they're on crutches or got some other kind of brace or something that they can't march in formation. So they get to cut the line. That's that reference. That's what Tink Tink means. But no, in all seriousness, I really enjoyed, even though my stint in the military wasn't all too long, I really enjoyed the camaraderie of it all. Like we'd pick on each other now and again, but at the end of the day, like it was all just good fun. When drill sergeant's really hard, we talk smack about them like you do. But I find a little bit of ways of just relieving tension in situations, and I think that kind of followed me after I got out of the service, just like thinking of a personal or an open battle situation and just finding some way of making light of it to bring up spirits. Making a small little family.
I love Josh's comment. Is that how you guys made to do all this graphic design?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is, Josh, and I'm not ashamed of it at all.
I think you have a new nickname.
Yes, I'm glad somebody coined that. It will never probably replace Pop Pop because I'm the senior statesman on the HWWS Web TV network, but we'll take Joel Daddy too. That'll work. It's a unique experience to serve, and it is truly an honor and a privilege to get to do so. For so many, there are so many reasons why people would want to serve. Everything from kind of listlessness and directionlessness to to find their core direction, to a genuine desire to just kind of get out there and go no quit. But the truth is, it's not everybody that wants to get to, not everybody is called to serve, and we're still a very small fraction of the population when weighed out. So
I think we're almost 2% now.
It's almost 2%. Sadly, this touches on. I know Marcus and his channel touch on some really, really tough issues to deal with, and in the veterans community, we have our own. And sadly, we lose in the U.S. today. We lose 22 brothers and sisters every day to suicide. 22 veterans every day. Does Air Force Mom have anything to say?
I will talk, but
my! You started something now. She won't,
Well, how
we
was
have
your?
We have a lot of our a lot of the kids went in, and my daughter is currently serving in the Air Force, and I'm incredibly proud.
We got great news today on our daughter's front.
Oh yes!
Our daughter is
a
parachute rigger with the 308th parajumper unit in the Air Force.
Wow!
So she packs and prepares all the parachutes and a lot of the other equipment as well. She's an aircrew flight equipment specialist, so she does all of the flight equipment, but she packs parachutes mostly. And she just received word today that her and another one of her peers were two of the riggers chosen to be allowed jump status, so they can actually go to jump school and they can start jumping on their own. So she's super excited. Yeah.
Well, here you go. And now I won't tell the story, but it's a great story to share. Okay. My daughter she's the gorgeous little blonde princess. She's the only daughter of
seven boys,
and then our daughter. She went through basic and she did all her stuff. This is not your mother's couch, princess, all that fun stuff. And then she was with the 308th, and she always volunteers to go to schools, and she does all kinds of the fun stuff. And she went to SEER training, and you can tell that story because it is fantastic. Okay, so, it's one of my favorites.
Our service members out there will know SEER stands for Survive, Evade. Oh, Jesus. Survive, Evade, Resist, and Escape. And it is one of the most difficult schools in any armed service. The most famous SEER school is a part of SEAL training, and it is literally the last part of SEAL training for the Navy. But it is a very difficult school to get into. It's also a very difficult school to pass. And there are a lot of reasons for this. It really is a psychological practice. Anybody who has survived and graduated SEER school already walks around with a form of PTSD because that's a messed up school. But it's awesome. It's an amazing school to go to. It teaches you a lot. Our daughter was fortunate enough to be chosen to go to SEER school because she was going to be deployed downrange with the parajumpers. And before she left, as an Army SEER graduate myself, I was trying to tell her a few of the survival tips. And one of the things we discussed was the things that the human body needs to survive. So if you're hunting, for example, there are some things that you want to hunt for and with, because the human body needs a few things. First of all, we need saline. We need water. We need saline. It has to fill our system. Secondly, we need protein. And I had explained to her that if you happen to have a dead critter in front of you, the single most nutritious part of that critter is actually his eyes. They're full of saline and they're full of protein. Mm-hmm. They're a delicacy in many, many countries. You can buy them on sticks in every place, around the world. But the reality is,
eyeball on a stick.
There's a reason for that. The reason for that is because it's the most nutritious portion of the animal. So, true to form, she is she looks like a princess, but she's little Billy Badass, and she went out to steer school, and they were for survival training. They were caring for a small rabbit, and they had to care for it until it was time to eat it.
Oh.
And so they handed the rabbit to one of the other airmen to do in. The other airman had trouble with that. She was crying, and there were tears and everything else. So Breyer grabbed the rabbit and took care of that. It was all done. And then they were like, well, who's next? Who's going to do whatever? And so Breyer said, oh, give me the rabbit. So she didn't even think to use her fingers, literally reached over and bit into the rabbit's eyeball. And
oh my God! Wow.
And so there were a couple guys there from the Air Force, from TJ school. There were a couple guys there from the Army, from all the different services. All of the big burly guys about vomited at the thought that this little bitty sweet little thing had just bit into the head of a rabbit to get an eyeball out. I just want to tell you that I lost 3 buttons off my shirt. The dad in me was just like, "That's right." So, a lot of guys are worried about what's going to happen to their little girls when they're out in the streets and things like that. And I don't worry.
Eat your eye out.
Don't give her any trouble. You walk away with no eyes. It's going to be a bad day.
Speaking of rabbits, my sister knows I am not afraid to eat a rabbit.
Yeah.
So
we just proved Josh out. That's a true story, by the way, guys. And what's great about that story is my oldest boy at the time was serving in the Marine Corps. And when he heard that story, his whole face went. Just WTF. His whole face just fell. And I'm like, yeah, see. So it was, they always try to do the who's cooler, the Marine Corps guy or the Air Force girl. Or,
oh, yes. Well, they kind of almost had it.
I went to my son's wedding. It's I love GI stories. They're just fun. And when it's about my kids, it's even better. I went to my youngest son's wedding, and my other boy was there. He was in the Army, and he was telling PT stories about, freezing his butt off. He is a Florida boy, born and raised right here in Central Florida. They stationed his dumbass in Alaska. Because apparently the Army doesn't have any maps.
No, but
they just had a great sense of humor. So they sent him to Alaska. So he's talking about his last PT test running in the snow, sleet that is Alaska. And she called in and to say congratulations to her little brother. And while she was on the phone, she said, well, I just had the extra time. I was supposed to have a PT test this morning, but it was raining. So we canceled. And I'm an old grunt, and my son's an Army CID agent, and we're just staring at each other. And he was, and then she hit us with the good part. She said, "It's okay though, because the Army was using the track. We couldn't have used it anyway." And your mind just stops at that moment, and you think, "Wow, we pick on each other across services all the time, and now we pick on the Air Force a little bit more." They cancel PT for the rain, and because the Army's using the track.
Yeah.
So,
Nicole, can I name my daughter someday after yours?
Holy eyeballs, Batman. Absolutely. Young Miss Breyer is already named after a princess in her own right. She is Miss Breyer Rose. After Sleeping Beauty. So
she's gonna be so upset that we told everybody that.
We told everybody that story on the internet.
That is awesome, though.
No, she probably won't mind that. It's that whole Breyer Rose thing. And she was like, "Do you have to do that? My whole name?" Yes, I do.
Yes.
Mad respect for her. Totally. Awesome. I don't know. I'm flabbergasted about that. I would love to see that. I would love to see her putting all these macho men to shame.
There are so many misconceptions about service and things like that. We have many traditions to go a long time for us to set our traditions aside. But I will tell you that the young ladies that are serving today are the toughest, baddest soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and guardsmen that you could ask for, regardless of gender. They rock, and our little girl is just one of them. There's just a ton of them out there. They're serving, and they're serving with honor and pride, and they're eating the eyeballs out of the rabbits, guys. It looks sad and shameful. I mean, come on.
Well, you, Marcus and GW, you're both writers. How much of your military experience gets put into your stories?
Marcus,
Oh,
go.
I'm going first this time?
Yeah, you go
I'm
this time.
sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I think I've the attention and detail that was drilled into me when I was in basics kind of has stuck with me for a long time. And in what I am writing, I try to go into as much detail as far as like analyzing what the person looks like, what their clothes look like, what their demeanor looks like whenever I'm writing. So I haven't really gotten that far into it just yet. Just a snippet of actual action. So I'm kind of I haven't really gotten time to analyze how that goes into it. But the attention to detail is definitely influenced by the military. Yeah.
Okay.
My first book is actually a combination of stories. The setting of my first book, which is Lucky, the Lucky Marks mystery book #1, and it is set after World War II. And the story that I really wanted to tell, I had two competing stories in my head. I've always wanted to write a detective novel because I'm a huge fan of the genre, from Raymond Chandler and on through 1930s and 40s Bogart movies. And the other story was I wanted to tell a story that I thought was important, which is the pitfalls of being a soldier coming home. You leave to go to basic training and you're between 18 and 20 years old. You come home 3-4 years later, you're in your mid-20s. Your life experiences are very, very different than those of your peers. And the tempo of life has been slowed down for you a great deal. From the minute you got off the bus in basic training and heard some really tall guy that looks a lot like the wrestler Sergeant Slaughter yelling things at you and calling you names and telling you things about your mother that you never knew. I mean, when you started hearing that to the moment that you got out of the service, your what we call operational tempo was high. Everything you did was high. You were either sitting there squatting bored out of your mind, or you were moving 110 miles an hour. There was no in between. And so when you get out of the service and you come home to regular life, tempo is much slower and much different. And a lot of GIs that are, come home suffer from, they get into trouble. I mean, it's not the nature of a GI, it's the nature of this. You're in a mundane life now. And where do you find the excitement? Well, you become adrenaline junkies, or you get into trouble, or you drink too much, or there's a lot of things that happen to guys when they first get home. And we do our best today to treat these things. We understand PTSD. We understand these things a lot more than we ever did. So I wanted to tell a story about that transition of what that was like. And so what I did is I took a young guy and I said, well, let's say at 18, he goes to the police academy. He becomes a rookie cop. And then World War II breaks out and he joins the service and he goes and fights in a war. When he comes home from the service, as far as his occupation is concerned, he's still a rookie. He's still a rookie cop. Ride the desk, learn the job. And from the experience of the job is concerned, that's an accurate statement. But from the perspective of the young soldier, he fought in a war. He's been in a war zone. He's not a rookie in his mind anymore. And so I wanted to deal with that psychological effect. And so Lucky's first case is he gets himself into trouble. He gets in with the wrong crowd, people who offer him excitement and adventure, the things that he's used to, a high tempo in life. And what the world is offering him is stable and secure and steady education. Go be a rookie cop, learn how to do the job, become what you're going to be. But what he's offered is more excitement and more rich, and he falls into that pitfall. So my whole first book is examining what happens to soldiers when life catches up with them when they get out. And so it played a huge role in that. And the rest of the Lucky Mark series is the consequences of that and how his life turns out. So my service played a huge role in that. I know when I got home from the service, I was bored out of my mind. Every job was just like mundane. It was dull. It was boring. Just the idea of driving a truck from point A to point B without somebody sitting next to you with an M16 in his lap. What kind of excitement is that? He's just sitting there. He's not even doing anything. He's just talking. You know, I mean, so there's just a whole different operational tempo to real life than there is to, you know, military zones.
Yeah.
So it was, I wanted to tell that story. I'm working on a story right now that's called What a Difference a Day Makes, which is going to be a side-by-side comparison. A friend of mine retired as a Marine Corps general, and before he did, they gave him a big party, and they called him the great hero of the day and all these wonderful things that they do in ceremony.
Yeah.
And he gave a speech, and one of the lines of his speech was, "Guys, don't praise me for this. This was my career. I did this for 30 years. He said, the guys I want you to praise are the guys that last year at the same time, they were at their prom. Their biggest worry was what kind of corsage or how do I get this on her? And the next 1 year later, they were in combat. They were fighting the fight, and they were doing it flawlessly, the way they were taught in basic training. Those are the guys you praise, because a year earlier, they were just kids. And a year later, they're warriors. And so I thought about that a lot. So I'm working on a story right now called What a Difference a Day Makes, where we examine 2 days in the life of the same person. One day is during the end of his senior year, prom time, graduation time. The other day is 1 year later after his first combat experience. And the difference in the way he sees the world based on those 2 days. And so my service plays a big part in my writing. And certainly it was easier to write my last book, which is Yesterday's Tomorrow. I have several characters that are operational military characters. And they are based loosely on my own experiences and those of my children. So huge influence on my writing.
Got a couple of people saying thank you for your service here. Alfred, just letting you know, we see all the comments coming up, so I apologize if I'm not saying hi to you guys or anything. But yes, we do see everyone's comment.
And Alfred and everyone who's dropped their thank you in there, and I don't speak for Marcus, but certainly for myself. It was an honor to serve and a privilege. I appreciate those words of thanks, and they are not required. We served because that's what we did.
Yeah.
But thank you.
What we felt in our hearts we needed to do.
So,
and it's greatly appreciated. You guys are just fantastic people, and I wouldn't be here if my freedom wouldn't be here if it weren't for people who fought in the military for my freedom. And so I appreciate all of that.
Now, Willow, you're celebrating up there. You're celebrating Remembrance Day. Is that correct?
Yes. Remembrance Day is to commemorate the servicemen of those who fought in World War II, World War I and II. And every year we bring out the poppies. And so that's kind of our way of raising money for our vets. I mean, it costs nothing really to make them. It's like and so just put a little bit of money in the poppy jar and take your poppies.
You just don't do that every day, folks.
Yeah.
Not outside of Southeast Asia. I mean, really.
But yeah, my grandfather fought in World War II. I should actually show a picture of him.
Oh, please do.
Excellent.
I apologize. But yeah, his name is Henry. Yeah, his name is Henry. Henry Sokol. Him and his siblings all served, and so he was a great guy. He never talked about his service though, and so that was just something that He died when I was 9, but it was just something that I remember him not actually ever referencing. My uncles never talked about their service, so it's nice to be able to have people who are willing to talk about their service, and to kind of. And for movies and storybooks that we've grown up to read, kind of referencing back to World War II, and the pain that they've endured afterwards as well. I'm sure that like a lot of them suffered. I'm sure my grandfather had some form of PTSD that he was dealing with. So I'm glad that we were able to bring him a little bit of joy, but yeah, it's just something that I don't ever remember him talking about, and I think it was just because he didn't want to be reminded of the pain from World War II. So, but yeah, again,
serving the modern vernacular is downrange, and serving downrange is not an easy thing for anybody to do, and particularly World War I and World War II, which were an introductory to modern society, to modern warfare, and it was a very tough thing. World War I, they called it shell shock. World War II, they called it anxiety. Literally, it was combat anxiety.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, they had another name for it, and it wasn't until recently that we established that it was actually different measures and forms of PTSD. So, but it's very difficult. For years, my father served in the Navy. I did not know where he served or how he served. He never discusses his time in the Navy. One day online, there was a picture. Somebody posted a meme of a ship, the Robert R. Wilson, and my stepmom had identified it as, oh my gosh, that's the ship my husband served on. And so I talked to my dad about it. That was his ship. And I did some research in 1968, 1969, when my father was serving. That ship was stationed in the Tonkin Gulf of Vietnam.
Oh,
and
wow.
So my father used to have this joke, and he used to tell, the great thing about the Navy, he'd say, is no matter where you are on planet Earth, you're only 1 mile from land, even if that mile is straight down. And so when I was a kid, my mom and dad didn't get along very well when I was a kid. They get along very fine now. But I would hear, my dad came home and what he was like, and stories about, the way he kept a job, or the way he did this or the way he did that. And there were many tendencies that I couldn't quite wrap my head around. And as he got older, he moved out west. He lives in Arizona, and he likes to go prospecting and mining. He is an educated geologist now. Those are the things he likes. He's never wanted to be in like a factory job or anything like that. And I never got that, because of course in the early 70s or whatever, a good paying union factory job would be the way to go, right? And then it occurred to me after hearing the story, now I know what ship he was on, and now I know where that ship was during Vietnam. Now I understand it. If you were trapped in a large tin can and all you heard were the sounds of combat outside all the time, and somebody brought you home and they said, hey, we have this great job for you in a factory where you're going to hear this clanking and banging and you're going to be inside all day long, would you really want that as a job? And when he got out of the service, his disability was called a nervous disorder.
Oh.
Okay. We know it today as PTSD. I mean, he doesn't want to go into a building where he's going to hear clang, bang, bang, clang, over monotony. And, these are the sounds of the Tonkin Gulf in 1968. So they're not anything he's anxious to relive. So he went into a career field and a thing that he did outside. He worked outside under the sunshine, as far landlocked as humanly possible. He lives in the Arizona desert. These were things I didn't understand as a kid. And it wasn't until I served myself and my own children, and we started hearing terminology in the modern era, that I started to understand there were a lot of pieces of his personality that didn't make sense even to people that he knew until you put them into context. And that context tells you a lot more about a person than they could tell you themselves. He's never said anything to me. He never talked about it at all. All I know is he served in a ship that the year that he served was stationed in the Tonkin Gulf, which was one of the most, brutal areas of sea warfare in the Vietnam War. And so it was amazing to me to hear that story and to place those pieces together and understand that, a lot of these things that people thought he was kind of flaky. He was always outside. He didn't want to go, it made perfect sense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I don't go camping. I don't go out to the woods and purposely sleep without my bed. I don't do that. But I spent several years on a camping trip for Uncle Sam, so I don't need it anymore. I don't feel the urge. If I'm going camping, it's gonna be a camper, a restroom, sheets and pillows and pillowcases. But so I understood those things a lot better.
What's funny? My dad loves to blow stuff up. Which is what he did. What he did in service. And so 4th of July was always his favorite holiday. But he actually, when I was little, he would make his own fireworks. And I always was fascinated by that. I was like, wow.
See, that's the scariest man in the neighborhood.
But he loves to blow stuff up.
See? Little pieces of their personality that don't make any sense at one point in your life all of a sudden starts to click later on. My grandfather served in World War II. He was one of 5 sons that served in World War II. All stationed throughout the Pacific and Atlantic theaters. He was in the Army, and so I can't speak for every family. Military service is definitely something that is a family business. You pass it on to your kids. My kids, my oldest boy served in the Marine Corps for one tour. My next boy served in the Army as a CID investigator for one tour.
Everybody loved him.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was a popular guy. He's the guy that you get to talk to. He interrogated you when you were getting ready to get thrown out because you were smoking dope, which is the number one reason the young guys, get in trouble. And but yeah, and of course, Briar's in the Air Force. My boys have sisters from their mom, and the oldest girl served in the Navy. So we're very proud of our kids and their service too. And
wow.
I'm sure there'll be another generation up the road, and they'll all suit up when called upon. So.
Wow. Marcus, do you come from a long line of family in the military?
Maybe not a long line. My grandfather on my father's side, he enlisted in the military when he was barely 18. He was a career Marine. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, retired at 40 years, probably around, maybe more, I'm not sure. And currently still, I guess, serving in Arlington National Cemetery, where I plan to go visit him again at some point.
Okay.
Aside from that, my cousin is in the Army as well. And Shelly's eldest daughter, my stepdaughter, is in Navy ROTC and planning on enlisting in the Navy when she gets out of high school. Okay.
Marcus, did you meet your wife while you were in the service?
No. We met about a year after I'd gotten out of the service is when we met.
Okay.
And because of New Orleans, we met at a bar.
Hey, that's okay.
New Orleans, depending on what time of year it is, a bar in New Orleans can be considered a combat zone, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on what, if you're there during Mardi Gras or the French Quarter Festival or one of those, probably,
Oh yeah. I think more so French Quarter Festival than Mardi Gras, but
there you go.
I have always wanted to go to Louisiana and take part in Mardi Gras. It always seems a very colorful and fun place to be. How are you guys faring with the aftermath of the hurricane?
So, we lost power
every hurricane, really.
Yeah. I thought we were going to get lucky this year. I feel bad for Lake Charles because they got 2 that pretty much smacked right over them, and then we got Zeta that came and knocked out our power for a couple hours. And that was pretty much it. The internet just got fixed 3 days ago, finally.
I was watching it. I started to think that there was some jazz musician that had made a deal with the devil, because you guys got 1, 2, 3. They just kept coming. They were aiming at you. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be singing that axe murder song.
Oh, I was in broadcasting school when that was happening, and I remember, the year after, it happened, and that was one of my projects, was to talk about Louisiana, and I'm just like I was geeking out at the fact that I was able to talk about Louisiana, and but I was also sad at the fact that I'm talking about, the pain, like everything that happened after Katrina. And I'm just like, where do I start? Who do I talk to about all this? So that was an interesting project to take on.
Well, if you ever want to take it on again, Shelley was here working security after Katrina. So
wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That had to be some
stories for days.
Wow. Willow, you brought up broadcasting school. You know what? You had asked earlier, one of your first questions was, what do we take away from the Army? And I hadn't even thought about this when you asked it until you mentioned it. And that was, I know the people on the internet are going to freak out, because there was a time before the internet. But my first journalism courses were actually journalism courses I took as correspondence courses. When we got ready to deploy overseas, they needed each unit had a public relations rep kind of person, and so they paid for us to do correspondence courses, which is the internet by mail, everybody. And that was my first journalism course, were taken in the Army as a correspondent for our deployment. So I guess that's something I took away from it, because I went to school for journalism afterwards.
I was wondering, were you trying to pursue being a correspondent for the military at that point?
Actually, no. I was 20 when I got ready to deploy, and they asked for people who would want to volunteer for this, and I do love to write. I've always loved to write. It's been my passion since I was a child. And so me and another guy from my unit volunteered. But I'll be straight up honest. At that time, I had spent 2.5 years in the infantry. I wanted to write because it would keep me in the rear. I wouldn't be digging holes in the sand. And I wouldn't be walking everywhere, because there was always a ride for the writer. So I was trying to get out of work. It didn't work, by the way, at all. We in the Army, in Marcus, we call that shamming. You're trying to sham your way out of something, right? And I was trying to sham my way out of infantry life. I found out after correspondence, after I passed correspondence school, after I became one of 2 correspondents for our unit, that we would not be doing that job separately. We would actually be doing it from wherever we were posted. So there was no shamming. It was extra work. So typical to a 20-year-old trying to get out of doing work, I actually ended up doing more. That wasn't actually my purpose. It seemed like a way to get out of working, and I was very wrong. And then it wasn't until 10 years later, when I went back to college, that I decided that was going to be a career that I was going to focus on. And I didn't think of broadcast. I'm a print journalist. I write. That's what I love. My keyboard and words and phrases and sentences and telling stories.
Yeah.
And I never thought of broadcasting until I was at a writers' conference, and I needed to stand out. And so I pulled my phone out and started interviewing the other writers. And that was that weekend. At the end of the weekend, I had a new job. And at the end of a couple of weeks after that, I had a new show.
Yep.
And a couple of years after that, I have this fantastic network, wonderful creators. But it was literally I never focused on it. I went to school to be a print journalist. I was going to write for the newspaper, and I did. I wrote for the newspaper for 4 years. I penned more than 500 byline stories, and I'm very proud of those. But this is where I ended up. Fortunately, I'm still getting to do journalism, and I get to broadcast now, and I get to learn so many things about broadcasting that I didn't know in school.
You know what? I have a question for Marcus.
Yes,
because you were talking about broadcasting
Go ahead.
and movies.
Yes.
Marcus, when you watch movies with the military and soldiers, do you pick them apart like he does?
Oh yes,
Okay.
absolutely. If somebody does if a uniform isn't, name tags and everything else is just off, I'm like, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. But it's
13 fucking guys walking across the hilltop and Saving Private Ryan.
Why are you walking on
13 silhouettes. That's a freaking shooting gallery.
Yeah.
Your brain just explodes. It pops and you're like, what were you? It's a great visual, guy. As a filmmaker, Tom Hanks, you rock, brother. And Ron Howard, nobody does it better, guys. But really, 13 silhouettes. That's a shooting gallery.
That's actually what was one of my questions was, is there any movies that you guys watch or you can't watch because of the inaccuracies?
Most of them I can watch, and I enjoy them. And the inaccuracies I understand are for dramatic effect. When they cluster everybody together. Now, Marcus and I both know that's one grenade's worth of that. That's an easy day. Boom, they're gone. But I understand it. The camera's only so wide. You got to get them all in there. So I get that. The only movie I can't watch is the first Jarhead movie.
Oh, yes.
The first movie, Jarhead, I know that the Marine Corps is represented in the title, but it is the worst representation of any war picture that I have ever seen. There is no I can't find any morally redeeming qualities in this movie, aside from its topic, which is warfare and the horror that is warfare. But there are much better examples of that in modern times. There are much better examples of that even in those times. But the first Jarhead movie, absolutely awful. And I think there was a movie series, Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there like a Navy SEALs movie series that was really cheesy and poorly done anyway? I've never seen it, so I couldn't tell you how bad it was, other than I've heard other people say that it sucked. So
I'd have to hear the name to even rattle my brain.
It's like Navy SEALs, Navy SEALs 1, Navy SEALs 2, some stupid stuff like that. It's like literal. I'll tell you how bad it's not. And this is not a knock on the man as an actor, because he's a phenomenal actor when he does character acting.
John Cena?
There's a movie series. I think it's like an Eric Roberts series. So that tells you all you need to know about the budget of these movies. But I mean, I love Eric Roberts, by the way, as a character actor when he's playing a part in a larger movie. But when it's an Eric Roberts movie, it usually means we couldn't afford the other guy, so Eric Roberts is the star. And so that tells you what you need to know there. But no, Jarheads, the first Jarheads, awful movie. Other than that, everything else I could pretty much stomach.
I was kind of shaken just by especially in the sniper tower scene where the SO walks in. I'm just like, that kind of worked me a little bit more than I wanted to. You just kind of like there's so many things wrong with that movie that your brain breaks when you first start. If you're a service member, first of all, this is made in an awkward period, and we have to remember that the way that the world feels about soldiers, sailors, airmen, marines, and guardsmen change with the ebb and flow of society. Mm-hmm. After 2001, after 9/11. Anybody that's ever worn a uniform, we were rock stars, however, if you ask those guys that came home from Vietnam in 1971, 1972, they were spit on at the airport. Yeah. So, I mean, there's an ebb and a flow. Between the Gulf War and 9/11, there was a period, a lull. We weren't spit on, but we weren't rock stars either. And a lot of people didn't understand the service mentality. So Jarheads was made in an era when they just didn't get it. So if you had pride in your service and you watched that movie, it made your brain fry, because it just wasn't a movie that was made with any pride.
Similarly, you go back a few years earlier, Clint Eastwood's Heartbreak Ridge. I'm an Army guy, and I wanted to be a Marine after watching him. I was like, dude, that guy rocks. So, I mean, there's just the ebb and flow of Hollywood, as it were. And Jarheads was just a poorly attempted a chance to do a commentary on war. But it almost felt like they were blaming the soldiers for the war, and that's not the way it works.
Right.
We do a job. If you want to blame somebody about the war, tell a political story. Those are the guys making the rules.
One of my favorite movies that I like watching with my husband is American Sniper. I actually enjoyed the fact that, well, Clint Eastwood director is a fantastic director for one, but he actually had people part of the military to be in the movie as well, playing their own characters. So he had the help of the American military to help make that movie. And it's a great story. Sad, but it's one of my favorites. Is there a movie that you feel portrays the military correctly, or is like on the nose that you feel is? I'm sorry, I'm just blabbering.
I think we're waiting to see who's going to go so we don't talk about each other.
No, sorry, Marcus, go ahead.
Marcus, go ahead.
Is there a movie that
based on my limited experience in the military, as previously stated, I think it's hard to properly encapsulate everything that happens in the military, from like your experiences and basic training to getting to your first duty station after going to the training for your actual job in the military, and then actually potentially getting out and sent on a deployment into an active downrange area where you're in the real risk of losing your life or having to force somebody else to lose theirs. I think it's hard to accurately portray that in a span of like 2 hours in a movie. So as far as like getting it on the nose, I haven't seen any, and there's just, I think a lot of people say Full Metal Jacket would be a good introduction movie.
Yeah, Brian mentions that in the chat.
Yeah. Full Metal Jacket's a good one. Platoon is another wonderful movie encapsulating the combat experience, the Vietnam era especially. I will say, if you really kind of to immerse yourself into something like Band of Brothers, which is a series.
It's a fantastic series.
It's a wonderful series, and Jonathan Winters was an amazing leader to start with, but he's also a fantastic writer, it turned out, in his biography. So Band of Brothers is a wonderful example. In terms of the day-to-day operations and the tactics, like I said, camera angles and things notwithstanding, because they have to do certain things wrong in order to get them all in. I will say that, and this is going to sound crazy, guys, one of the single best representation of combat technique that I've ever seen on screen, Battle Los Angeles. It's a sci-fi movie, guys. It's aliens and it's ridiculous and it's like, what the hell? But when you watch these guys move, and then you watch the multi-service interactions between, there are Air Force PJs on the ground who end up joining in with a small band of Army people who end up in a full squad of Marines, working their way through the city. When you watch the way they interact, the tactics they use, the operational language they use, it is amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the few movies where I was like, oh my God, they're going to show all this stuff and I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm here to be thrilled. I mean, there's aliens, it's an invasion, and I'm here to be thrilled. And all I can see is, oh my God, my blood pressure is going to kill me. And then they did it right, and I was absolutely impressed with that movie. I was impressed with the portrayal. Aaron Eckhart plays the gunnery sergeant who runs the team through there. His portrayal was spot on. And the portrayal of the Marines around him. He had a reputation, and again, Marcus was telling you earlier, when you're in basic or AIT or any of these places in the rear, your relationship with your NCOs is a tenuous one. And therefore, the guys talk shit about the NCOs. I'm positive the NCOs do their talking shit in the back room. because let's face it, when you're 20 years old, we were a bunch of just dumb guys. So they did their shit talking too, and I think. But watching this guy had a reputation. He had lost some men in combat, so there was some attitude and there was some hostility floating around the squad that was very representative of the reputations that carry. We had guys when I was in the service that no matter where they were stationed, it was never as good as the last place they were stationed. So you'd always have the guy that would talk about, well, back at Fort Campbell, we did it a different way. And those guys exist and they're real. And I was watching some scenes in that movie and those conversations were coming up. So they had obviously spent a lot of time talking to real Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen and trying to get it right. And they did a bang-up job. Fantastic, exemplary movie to look at military tactics and attitudes. And it's all wrapped up in a sci-fi package, so you can't lose.
Paul Gross, he was in Due South. He became quite the Canadian director, although he doesn't do much when it comes to American movies, but he did a really great movie called Hyena Road in 2015. I think that depicts that's one of the closest depiction to the Canadian military that we'll probably ever get in mainstream media. But I think I really would love to see Paul Gross come back to American cinema so that he can create more of those type of movies. But yeah, he also did a movie called Passchendaele. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it's really good. So it's one of those movies that, again, portrays the Canadian military during World War I. I'm so sorry. Wow, brain fart. But it's also a love story. That's kind of why I kind of stay away from that movie, is because for a war movie that's portraying the Canadian military, I would actually prefer, the actual story of the veterans rather than it being a love story. But,
Well, amazingly enough, that is the story of a veteran, though, because the reality of service is that, you're 18 to 22 years old 90% of the time. You have this small cadre of 10 to 15% that are your career officers and NCOs down the road. But the big bulk of military servicemen and women are between the ages of 18 and 22. These are their formative years. There's always a gal at home. There's always a guy at home. There's always somebody who's waiting for you or somebody who you've met. And, I think, there's, recruiters throw out a lot of words at people. And we tend to do that in the movies and in popular culture, too. We throw out those words, these big, overwhelming, service, honor, all patriotism. And we throw these huge concepts out at people. But when you look at soldiers look at each other, you're there, what you're defending isn't liberty, it's not justice, it's not flags, when you're there, you're trying to survive, and what you're defending is your Saturday night. You're defending your girl, you're defending your baby that you just had. So those love stories they're an incredible part of the journey, because that's what, when it's all said and done and I'm 50 years old and it's 30 years behind me, I could throw out things like, I fought for liberty and justice and dignity and patriotism and democracy and honor. But in truth, at 20 years old, those words don't mean a lot to people. At 20 years old, what means a lot is your buddy, the guy that you drink with every Friday night. He's sitting right next to you. You don't want to see him get hurt. You don't want to see him get killed. When you're 20 years old, what matters to you is that new baby. They still have new baby smell. That matters to you. Getting back to that, living long enough to see that baby grow up, or to see their first words, or to know that their first words might be daddy. Those things mean something to you. And that girl at home, that's in the World War II and World War I area, those girls that were tying those yellow ribbons around trees, and those girls meant something to the men who were serving. And today there are just as many fellas that are tying those ribbons as there are girls. So those people mean something. So those stories, before we dismiss them, a lot of the times we have to really stop and think. They are the story of the humanity that these guys fought for. Because, John Wayne running into battle, throwing grenades like he was a baseball player, that's not the story of combat. That's a great recruiting commercial, but it's not the story of soldiers. Soldiers are guys that are out there. They've got girls they took to prom last year, and they knocked up 3 nights after that, and now they're trying to figure out what they're going to do as a new daddy. And they're trying to pay the bills, and they want to survive long enough to see that baby born. Those are the guys. Those are the real guys. And you talk to your grandmas and your grandpas, and you talk to those people, and when it boils right down to it, that was them too. It was them in the 1930s and 40s, them in the 1950s and 60s, and it was us in the 1980s and 90s, and it was this new generation today. And so, those are great stories, those love stories, because they tell you why they fought. Because all the other words that you use, it's great, but, what did Saving Private Ryan want? He wanted to get back to his friggin' mom. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, at the end of the day, sure, I'll defend the bridge. Let me go home to mom. It's all good, so.
And Sage, as a military mom and a wife of a military husband, do you look back at all the letters that were written and think back to?
Not letters so much. The phone calls are the funny stories, because
this is great.
Yes. They had to stand, in this long line. Think about it, in the early 90s, and there was like one phone, and everybody only had a few minutes, right? So I was lucky if I got a phone call once every, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
And then, so I remember that. And then my daughter, when she was deployed in the Middle East, and she was texting me, complaining that she couldn't get Netflix to work. I was like, what? I said, look at that. Can you believe that? So
she shared a post that was wonderful. She shared a post. Interesting that she shared the post on Facebook using her phone.
Yeah.
Here's a post on Facebook that is literally complaining
this connection
that
is not
the
possible.
internet was not fast enough, and that several of the guys were ticked off they couldn't get their daily Skype call.
Yes.
And I'm like, after about 2 weeks of waiting for my name to pop up on a list, I would go to this room where there were like 4 phones, like a phone booth, and stand in a line and put my name down and get on the phone and have like 15 minutes to say, I'm alive, everything is okay, hope things are good, I'll be home soon. Bye. And here we are, some 30 years later, and Breyer is telling us how the internet she wants to go back to her Air Force base because the Army base that they stuck her on doesn't have a good internet connection.
It's true. True story.
I think that just shows just how much the military has changed over time. I mean,
it is.
It hit me a couple of points. The ASVAB, as far as I know, is no longer rated to 180. It's rated 0 to 100.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
It's actually better because percentage-wise, it makes life easier for you to do the math.
Exactly.
We had all these categories, and they added up everything for your GT score. And when you got it all added up, you were like between most guys ran between 80 and 150, and then the really freaking brilliant ones rated way high, and they went on to go to OCS and CIA training or some shit like that.
But one of the other parts, I just found this out, what was it, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago? Remember shark attacks in basics?
Yes.
They don't do that anymore.
That's not fair.
That's not fair.
That's a part of my youthful trauma.
Yeah.
To be a part of, I will say this. Most amazing night I was as an adult man, again in my 40s, I think. My son shipped out to the Marine Corps basic, and now the Marines, when they go to basic, when they arrive at Parris Island here on the East Coast, they get one phone call, and it's scripted. There's a script to read. And it's hi everybody, this is Alex, and I've arrived at Parris Island safely. I won't be in contact for 3 to 5 days, yada, 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 no letters, no nothing, just letting you know. It's basically their arrival call. And while they are reading the script, they're doing it under what Marcus referred to as what's called a shark attack. It's when multiple drill instructors, multiple drill sergeants are standing over you. And the round browns are in your face, and they're yelling and they're screaming, and you have to do what you're supposed to do under that pressure. And so I, of course, as a soldier, I knew about this. And, you know, Marcus, you can appreciate this. You know about these things. Alex's mom, Dina, did not know about this. So my phone rings at around 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I answer the phone, not Dina. And I answer the phone and I'm like, hello. And all I hear is, hello, this is Private Alexander Pomature. I have arrived at Paris Island safely. You cannot reach me for 3 to 5 days. I cannot get any letters for 1 week. I cannot do this for the day. Goodbye. I am safe. Goodbye. Boom, click. I busted at 2:30 in the morning. I busted out laughing so hard. I mean, I thought I was gonna pee. I just couldn't stop laughing. It was just horrible. And Dina's laying there, and she's like, "What was that? What was that?" And I said, "That was Alex." And she's like, "What? What are you laughing about?" I could not even think of how to explain it. He sounded so terrified, and in no way, shape, or form, as a dad, should I have felt the glee and glory that I felt in that moment. But as a service dad, and, you know, as a serviceman yourself, when you get that phone call from a friend or a loved one or a son or daughter, niece or nephew, the trauma of it is negated by your own experiences. You're just sort of like, wow, they're part of the club now. They're part of the group. And there's just, I laughed so hard. And poor Dina, she just about cried thinking, oh my God, was it that bad? And I'm like, yes, it was that bad. It was that funny. And I just kept going. But yeah, speaking of the shark attack, that is part of the Paris Island experience when you first arrive. And yeah, I do know that they have a lot of things that you can't do. And part of that is just real quick in the mental health issue of things. Civilian doctors, after you get out of the service, have been diagnosing a lot of PTSD cases from non-combat troops. And nobody was able to figure out quite why. And that is because a lot of the conditioning that happens in basic training in AIT, the places where we study, and even in your permanent party, a lot of that conditioning is conditioning through trauma. And it's necessary for combat troops because you have to be able to reload your rifle and aim down range all while bad things are happening around you. So by creating an environment that is noisy and aggressive and all of these things, it creates distraction. And then what they're asking you to do is focus beyond the distraction, get your push-ups done, be able to eat your chow, be able to unpack your stuff, all while we're yelling and screaming at you, all in this chaos, so that you can build up muscle memory. The problem is with that conditioning is that the results of that conditioning are not necessarily permanent, but they're certainly long lasting. And so to this day, when I enter a room, I sit with my back to a wall. It has nothing to do with combat, everybody. I'm not looking for gunfire. Marcus, you can testify with me on this. I'm looking for the NCO that's going to walk in the room.
Yes.
Because if he walks in and I don't stand up, I'm screwed. So I don't put my back to the wall because I'm afraid of dying. I put my back to the wall because I want to be right. And so there are things that situational awareness, Marcus referred to attention to detail. You focus on every little detail of things. When I set the setup, I want everything to be right. I walk around here, I'm moving Groot around back and forth, I'm checking the camera. There's attention. Those things are long-lasting effects, and they're long-lasting effects of a traumatic training process. It was introduced in the 1700s here in America by a German, so they're very aggressive to start with. So at any rate,
thank you.
It's true. General, come on, damn it. Give me my...
Sorry, that's all I can get.
God, my brain is shut off for a minute there. Thank you.
Sorry.
Anyway, yeah. So, von Steuben, excuse me.
There you go.
Von Steuben. General von Steuben introduced basic training, the concept of basic training, to the troops of Valley Forge. Actually, they were already freezing. They were missing toes, and he's out there yelling at them.
Well,
nice guy.
and you stop thinking about the toes.
Yeah. They did stop thinking about their toes. They started thinking about their next battle, and they started winning. So it worked. But those concepts were introduced a long time ago. It's hard to break habits. But what our psychologists are finding out is that without understanding the training process, they were literally diagnosing guys that really had just had behavioral modification with PTSD. Your behavior had been modified through trauma, but you had long since been cured of any long-term trauma. What you had was conditioned behavior. You sit in a certain chair in the room, you keep an eye on the space around you. There are a lot of things that you do as a behavior, and you can break those habits if you choose to. I don't know about you, Marcus. I've never tried. I like some of my habits. They're like, they keep me alert. And, I don't feel like they're going to keep me alive because I live in a suburb in Florida. Come on. But I do believe that they're keeping me one step ahead when I'm in business or when I'm in school or wherever. I like these habits. So.
And speaking of habits, Marcus, how have your eating habits changed since being part of the military?
So I've always been like a heavy eater. I eat a lot. I have been since I was a kid. My mom used to call me the bottomless pit. I put that as a testament to that. But then military is like you literally have to inhale your food. So I was younger. I used to have a little bit of competition with my dad whenever we had dinner. Who could finish dinner first? Before the military, it was always him. After the military, it's always been me.
How about you, Garrett?
That's how eating's going after the military.
I was a little guy. I think I'm 5'8". I think I was maybe 147, 148 pounds when I went in the service. I've always had an athletic build, but I'm very small. And so I was one of the guys that was made to eat more. To pass all my physical requirements, I had to put on about 7 or 8 pounds. While many guys that go in the service are a little overweight and they need to take off weight. So the drill instructor's method of balancing the scales is to take the food from the big guy and give it to the little guy. But as Marcus alluded to, you still have to finish on time because you're still out the door in a matter of minutes. So I learned how to eat a lot fast. When I was younger, the short-term effects were I could eat really, really fast and I could eat anything I wanted to because of my metabolism and because I stayed in shape. As I get older, I find that habit, actually, I get indigestion. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I can't sit down with 3 Whoppers and just digest them. They don't even start to digest until 30 minutes after they're in there because you're eating so fast. And so you just kind of, I've had to teach myself to slow down a bit because when yes. I can eat the way I did when I was 20, but it hurts more.
Yeah. There's a wonderful floor show afterwards.
Yeah, there's me whining, and it's almost like I'm a soldier again. I whine, I bitch, I moan. So, but yeah,
less walking.
Yes, and I'm looking at the chat over here. Brian's acting. Who is he?
Open up movies while we were on that.
Lee Ermey was acting was his therapy. Yes. Lee Ermey is obviously famous. He's known as Gunny across the world for his portrayal in Full Metal Jacket, and of course many other films, as well as a consultant on many, many films. He taught military, as did I'll forget the other name. Brian, you can put it up there. You guys know him from Saving Private Ryan. He was the white-haired colonel with the mustache. He actually was a military consultant.
Arlie Emery.
But there's Arlie Ermey, Gunny, was a great guy, and he did training. A lot of guys do the arts after the service. I think a lot of people know this. The Marine Corps is very proud of some of their celebrities, from Jonathan Winters, who is a Marine, to obviously Gunny himself, so many others. Today, obviously, we do broadcasting, both Marcus and I. But also in the arts, very well-known rap artist, Soldier Hard, and his music is actually he is former Staff Sergeant Jeff Barillo from this current War on Terror, And Jeff's music is actually, that's his therapy. He does a lot of songs about PTSD. He does a lot of songs about relationships in the service. You asked earlier, Sage talked a little bit about what it was like to be an Army wife. You know, and a lot of wife stories, a lot of stories of heartbreak and breakup and reunion carry across generations. There's stories, you know, there's the Dear John letter. That's a World War I story. The Dear John, I'm leaving you. Have a nice life if you live. You know, I mean, it was, you know, those things are they're universal, and so Soldier Heart's music is all about those issues. So.
Is there a piece of literature that an author that you've read that from an author or literature itself that inspired your work?
Ooh. Yes.
Too
every
many?
one of them. all of them. It's hard.
All of the authors.
All of the authors. I alluded to earlier, my first books were mystery novels, so Raymond Chandler, and those guys were huge influences.
It's all you.
I love, as I alluded to, I love a turn of phrase. I love to work with words. I love to put together a good turn of phrase. I get that. I think I hope to be heavily influenced by great authors like Dickens, you know, who have something to say. All of Dickens's work is entertaining, but it's all social commentary. He was telling stories about what Victorian England was all about. And so I hope that my stories have something to say. So, but all of them, you know, I'm a classics fanatic. So whether it is Melville or Dickens, my favorite poet is Tennyson. So I love those things. But modern Chuck Gannon is a fantastic author. So gosh, this is my job now. I fill that chair with authors, artists, and filmmakers all the time. So I've met so many of these guys that are amazing to me. And if I'm 1/10 the writer that they are, I'll consider myself successful.
How about you, Marcus? Any author or piece of literature that has inspired your writing?
I didn't really realize it until the question was formed, but I noticed in my writing I like putting it in first person, like you're experiencing it. And now I'm realizing it's because of there's a book. It's more of an autobiography, but it is the journal of Patrick Seamus McFarthy, and I might be pronouncing that last name wrong because I'm not great with Irish names. He was a soldier during, I believe, the Vietnam War. I could be wrong about that, but his journal was found when it was returned to his family once he returned from Vietnam, and they were so moved by everything that he had written down in his journal, they actually got it published as a book through a larger publication company that actually does quite a lot of that. I can't remember. It's been years since I've read the book. I still got it sitting on a shelf though. So I think that was a bit of influence in two ways. It influenced the decision to join the military, even though that took a minute to catch up, but also influence on the style that I take whenever I'm writing.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's a Mark Twain inspired style. You know, after Tom Sawyer, when he did Huck Finn, as I said, it was all in first person. It was told from Huck's perspective. So same basic story, but told from the boy's perspective instead of as a omniscient third person. So
right.
And that became a very popular style, especially in the South. So being from Louisiana, that's not a surprise.
Just to be clear, yes, I am paying attention to the chat. I am not ignoring anybody. It's good to see you, Zorox. I'm not trying to ignore you at all, okay?
Hello, Zorox. I just read that. Hello. We weren't ignoring you. There we go.
Hello.
Sisters. Yes.
I I don't think I have that version of genitalia.
It's a fluid world. Zoroaster, we're with you.
All right, so with the holidays slowly creeping up on us, or quickly, whatever world you guys live in, Starbucks has already rolled out their holiday stuff. Is it, and this is an argument that happens every year on the internet, is it a form of do you guys find it rude that people decorate before Remembrance Day or, Veterans Day?
No, not me.
No?
I don't. I get a little annoyed that they're putting up Christmas before Thanksgiving, but I
it has nothing to do with Veterans Day whatsoever. But I thoroughly, Christmas is one of my favorite holidays, and in part because of the visual display at Christmas. But in my mind, I could just be broken. It's just the psychology of my mind. In my mind, one of the things that makes it special is it's impermanent. It's temporary. It is a moment in time, a snapshot that's beautiful. It's pretty. It makes snow pretty. And anybody that's ever had to shovel it knows there's nothing pretty about snow.
No!
But Christmas makes snow pretty because it's temporary. Christmas makes, tinsel. And look, anybody's ever had to pick pine needles about their floor knows that's not easy. It's not pretty. You're going to be doing it until June. Why put them up in August? I mean, come on. Yeah, but it has nothing to do with Veterans Day. I don't find it rude or anything. Honestly, every time someone says thank you for your service, I don't know what to say.
I'm from the South, so it's always thank you.
Yeah, I am exceptionally proud of my service. In no way am I humble. I spend my life on camera. But at the same time, I don't know how to react to that because although I'm incredibly proud of my service, it was a piece of me, it's a part of me. That there is a holiday to celebrate veterans it blows my mind. It's wonderful to be included in, again, we talked about Dick Winters earlier and Vander Brothers in his books, but Dick Winters is quoted as saying something that always rings in my head. He's quoted as saying, "I am not a hero, but I served in the company of heroes." And so, from my perspective, that there's a holiday honoring veterans is wonderful. That I'm one of them is remarkable. And I'm not special. I'm one of many, and the guys that I served with were extraordinary, and it was my privilege to serve with them. So I'm just it's literally that speech at the Oscars. It was just an honor to be nominated. I think that's all of us. It's just an honor to be thought of on Veterans Day. So if you guys want to decorate for Christmas 3 weeks ago, I don't care. It's annoying, but I don't care. And I would rather decorate for Halloween. That's my second favorite holiday. And again, because of the decor and how special it can become, decorate for Halloween and then move into Christmas. Better yet, have Thanksgiving dinner. For me, Christmas starts on the weekend after Thanksgiving. Because after Thanksgiving, when the family's all around and they're all fat and tired, I make them hang lights. So.
Right.
See,
right.
Where I live, we usually have waist deep of snow by now. But on the off chance where it doesn't snow that often and we are still having nice days, decorate during this time. Take this opportunity between the snow and the cold weather to decorate your house because nobody wants to decorate their house in -30 weather.
That's a valid observation. When I think about that now, if you live in Canada, if you're up there with Willow, leave that shit up. Don't even bother to take it down because
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. Just hang it up. have a switch installed so at Christmas time you walk over and you go, it's done. Because that's crazy. I'm at Thanksgiving weekend. I am literally standing outside in shorts, hanging lights, so it's not really a big deal. But looking at it from the perspective of those folks that live up north, maybe y'all should
just leave up all our Christmas decorations.
People get Alexa to do it for you. So on like Friday after Thanksgiving, you can simply say, Alexa, decorate for Christmas, and it'll go on. Yeah.
I'll have to remember that. I had a major brain fart. I'm so sorry. With your celebrations, I know with the pandemic happening, we aren't able to leave our houses and go celebrate Veterans Day. But is there any celebrations happening online where you guys are?
I don't have any notifications.
Oh, really?
Nope. I actually forgot it was Veterans Day today, if I'm being honest. I don't pay attention to dates. I really don't.
Tomorrow,
I miss my VA appointments.
Yeah, tomorrow is Veterans and Remembrance Day, but I know I saw stuff happening in Ontario. They're going to be doing the Remembrance Day celebration online. So I know in the States it seems like it's a bigger deal, though, in the States than it is up in Canada. You guys actually have parades.
I get a whole list of free stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'll just go around town to all the restaurants like, hey, I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
And then go to the one next door, hey, I'm a veteran.
Typically speaking, there are parades, small town parades, things like that. In COVID, I don't know that a lot of those things are happening. A lot of the festivals and things are not happening. However, I did just the other day, I got an email from a friend that said, hey, guess what? Golden Corral is still going to feed us.
Nice.
So, so there are a handful of things that are still happening for veterans. But for a lot of us today, and again, we live in a post 9/11 world. For a very large portion of that period from 9/11 to maybe even just 3 or 4 years ago, if you've ever worn a uniform, you were just like, you were a rock star, man. You were the sexiest thing alive. So my movie tickets are cheaper every day, not on Veterans Day, every day. There are a lot of, veterans discounts for things, and, Veterans Day, they will give away veterans meals, things like that. So it's a lot. I honestly, I don't know about Marcus. I haven't been to a Golden Corral on Veterans Day because there's a piece of me that's like, I'm almost embarrassed. I'm like, really? I don't what? It's a $10 meal. I'm going to show you my ID for a free. I don't know. I can't do it. I appreciate it very much. And I'm approaching an age right now where that senility is going to kick in, and I'm going to start showing that ID card for a meal anywhere I can get one. So I'm not saying I won't. I'm just saying I just haven't got there yet.
I think for me, the only place that I really appreciate it is at Buffalo Wild Wings, because you get a medium wing, fries, and a beverage of choice for free.
Oh,
damn! It's on.
Medium wings, fries, and a beer for free because I'm a veteran. Why, thank you.
Boom! Thank you. They say thank you for your service. No.
Not that I'm being rude, but I mean Starbucks needs to up their game, because all we do is give free coffee to vets, and I'm just like,
in
really,
fairness,
just free
though,
coffee?
they're a coffee joint.
They could throw in a muffin. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they could throw in a muffin. A little.
I would totally do that.
Hey, if we have an audience of GIs out there, we just throw in a muffin. This just went way dark. All right, I'm just saying, this whole show went a little deeper. I'm just saying, we told them, give us the coffee, throw in a muffin. The whole world went ape shit crazy just then.
See, the thing is, I live in a province. My city, my province is known to be like extremely cheap, and anytime that we hear free stuff, we're outside the door waiting for the place to open.
I guess my problem is that, you know, my family didn't serve. I mean, my family served in as much as they were my family, but they didn't serve. So when I go to like the Golden Corral or one of these restaurants or whatever, and there's a dozen of them, by the way, there's a bunch of barbecue joints or whatever do stuff. I always feel bad because like I get a free meal, and then but I also have to pay for the other 17 people that are following me around because I have a huge family. I have my, you know, I have the girls and I have the kids, and now just about the time I got rid of the kids, they started showing up with grandkids. So now there's like 30 people following me around, and I'm the one that gets a $10 meal. I'm like, really? Boys, you guys help me out here or what? Because I wasn't going to bring any of them out. But thanks to my free meal, it cost me $120. So thanks for that. You know, I mean, I was going to make them all eat at home, and then they said, but Dad, you eat for free. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's going to help me. If I go alone, maybe that would work out for me.
But you guys are amazing. Thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight. And Marcus, again, I need to watch your show more. I watched one episode. I apologize for that.
We're still new. We're still trying to get the format right.
Words Have Power. When do you normally broadcast?
We usually post videos and post the podcast to our channels on Thursdays, I think is what we're doing. We're actually a little behind right now, but we're planning on catching back up with that starting next week.
Okay. And Garrett, I know you're posting stuff almost every day.
It is not almost. It's every day. HWWS Web TV. I'm proud to be the executive producer of this motley crew. It's wonderful, but I'm also the host of the Hanging With Web show with a new episode on HWWS Web TV every single morning at 9 a.m. We also we have our HWWS Web TV specials that include Film Freaks, Myth Matchup, and whatever else these crazy people think of. It's wonderful. So there's content coming out every day from Willow or from Brian or from Ryan. There's so many, I don't know their names anymore. There's a bunch of these guys, and they put out a bunch of stuff, and you can check it out on HWWS Web TV, and you can check us out on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and
all of the things.
All of the places I don't even know what they all are. Thank goodness for staff, otherwise I'd be lost. But I did want to leave you with something special tonight, Willow. I knew it was a Veterans and Remembrance Day thing. I know there are a lot of people online and in the chat that were saying thank you and from the civilian community. But for those soldiers and sailors and airmen, Marines and guardsmen that tune in, I had something. You asked us both about our writing and about the writing that we've done that was influenced by our service. And so I would like, in addition to being a novelist, I also was, for a brief time, a poet.
Okay.
So what I'd like to share with you is a prayer.
Okay.
And it's a prayer that I'd like to send out to all of our brothers and sisters in uniform today and who have ever served. And so if you'll bear with me because I have old eyes, give me my glasses. Oh, God. Give me my glasses. All right.
Yeah, we've got mine too.
Hey, we all need glasses here.
There you go. So, all right. So if you'll bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, a simple soldier's prayer by G.W. Comature. May the Almighty bless and keep me one breath to the next. Forgive the lives I've taken and heal the wounds inflicted upon me by those I have inflicted mine upon. Make my service pure. Make me humble and in want for no praise, but honor me with pride in my service. May my, may my aim be true and my hand steady in common cause with my countrymen. Give unto my family patience and gentle disposition to my calling. Send blessings to my brothers and sisters in the air and on the sea, and to those before me and those behind me. Give them to the soundness of conscience and steadfast confidence that only our fellowship can foster, and bestow upon these, the warriors, the clarity to see beyond the battlefield, to the peace and hope for which all of the noble blood of our company has paid.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for listening to it. That's hung on my wall for the last 25 years, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So,
Marcus, any final thoughts?
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the show. It's always nice to,
No problem.
always nice to hop on to somebody's show just to like help them out with conversations. I know I'm not all that great just yet. But yeah, happy Veterans Day, happy Remembrance Day in advance to everybody. Thank you.
No problem. Glad to have you on, and I'll definitely have you and your wife on again. Talking
Marcus,
about your show and what you do.
When you get a chance after we go off the air, can you make sure we get your contact information too? I'd love to have you guys on to talk about your channel on the Hanging With Show.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so Marcus, where can we find you on the interweb?
So you can find us on YouTube at Words Have Power Murder Hour. You can find us on Facebook at the same. We also have Instagram and Twitter, Words Have Power MH. And I have to remember that because dyslexia wants me to say MR. We also have podcasts on Google and Apple Podcast. There we go. As Words Have Power Murder Hour.
Awesome. And Garrett, where can we find you?
Oh, that way. Right there. Let's see. Like us on Facebook at HWWS Web TV. Also on YouTube, HWWS Web TV. You can also check us out. It's under construction right now, but we're still working hard on it at hwwswebtv.com, where you can also find bios on these lovely people from HWWS and all of our information about our shows and pages for all of our shows. So you can find the Pillow Talk page, you can find the Hanging With Web Show page, etc. And on all the social medias, again, at Hanging With Show or at HWWS Web TV. Just do those searches and you will find us. If you can't find us, I did it wrong, and this is my only job now, so I can't do it wrong.
And one day this will be my only job, hopefully.
Hopefully.
All right, you guys have a great night. Thank you for hanging out with us, and check back with us soon. I hope to return Sunday for a Star Trek meetup.